Robert Plank Show, episode 306. Success, Positioning, Aspiration, Inspiration, and Perspiration. Start a movement with Giving Back podcast host, Rob Lowe. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show. Our guest today is Rob Lowe, and he's the host of the Giving Back podcast, which is the show that shines the spotlight on people and organizations doing amazing things for others in need. In addition to sharing inspirational stories of making a difference in people's lives, Rob works with people and companies who want their social impact to resonate in their communities. Rob's motto is, don't be stingy with your love, and he guarantees that sharing your time, talents, and treasure is the only path to lasting personal, spiritual, and professional growth. So, Mr. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Robert.
Cool. I'm glad that you're here. And so you have this this podcast, and we talked a little bit about it, but like sort of in your own words, can you kind of tell us about this podcast and maybe some other stuff you do?
Sure. So, really, it is exactly how you talked about it. I mean, you hit it on the head, Robert. The show spotlights people and organizations doing amazing things to help others in need. And it was really for myself. It was not a commercial venture. It wasn't like something to make money and see the world and meet people. Well, actually, it was about meeting people, but really, it was about stories that touched my heart as a father and as a however year old guy, 50 at this point. But at one point, I heard these stories about people in my neighborhood, like literally in my community, in my hometown, and I just thought that they were wonderful, just doing beautiful things. And as I started talking to them and meeting them, I realized I was right. They are beautiful people doing beautiful things. And what I saw was that there's just really very few channels, very few opportunities for them to talk to a broader market or broader group about what they do and to inspire others. So here we go. We're 100 plus in, and great guests and people who are sharing, really sharing their love with others and coming on, and just, it's just really exciting. It's really exciting because when you hear different things that people are doing, really from the heart, and then you also hear some very, very common threads, and the opportunity for myself to apply those to my own life and to share those experiences and some of those lessons is just absolutely, it's just been a game changer for me.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to jump into some of that stuff and jump into some of those examples and common threads. And so I'm sort of just, so you have this cool idea to sort of shine the spotlight on the people who are like doing great things and could use some of this extra recognition. So can you kind of tell us about like maybe some of these people, or like maybe like your favorite kind of episodes, or just so we can kind of feel of what kinds of people who are doing good in the world and stuff like that?
Sure. But I got to tell you, honestly, picking one or even a couple out of all these incredible people is going to be tough. But I'll share a couple that have special meaning to me. I think they stand on their own, but if you want to hear a little bit more, that's great. So one of the people that really impressed me a lot is a man named Josh Coombs. He has a hashtag do something for nothing. He's in England. I believe he was my first overseas guest, and he is a hairdresser. He's a younger fella. He was in a band, just a really fun guy. And, he became a hairdresser, and he'd seen what the English call the homeless. They call them rough sleepers. He'd seen him about, and he, put coins in the cup occasionally when he had it. And one day he decided to do a little bit more. And he said, well, I got shears and I got my experience, and maybe these folks can use some, maybe they could use a little cleaning up. He's at a pretty high end place. So this isn't just like a quick buzz and get out of here like the military. So if you go to hashtag do something for nothing and you see this man cutting hair, he is so intent. He is so focused on giving them everything he's got. And the thing about it is, what was really smart is a friend of his said, "Hey, I'd like to come along and take some pictures." He's a photographer, and maybe we could share these and just see what's going on. It inspired people to the point where they had a meetup. They had a meetup in London where they had like 300 or 400 people who came out and just said, "Hey, I want to be a part of this. I want to help. Just help." And you imagine the amount of love that went out that day, Robert. Just people fanning out and just making things happen for other people in need. And it wasn't just the homeless. It was the homeless and helping them, but it was like in different different like shelters and different charities, and they just got busy. And the exposure, not for Josh, but the exposure for people to get involved and to give back. I mean, there's people now who are doing this on a regular basis who never would have started without that example. He's been in he's been all over the place. He's been in I think he went to Australia, Japan, he went to Greece. And this was for some of the refugees that were coming not just from Syria, but also from Afghanistan and Iran, and chronicling that and sharing that and showing how people can make a difference really by sharing, one of those three things. Everybody brings time, talent, and treasure to the table. And this guy just rocked it out. He just rocked it out. And at this point, the interesting thing is, at this point, he decided to step it up. And I talked to him recently and said, "Hey, I don't hear you being much at the salon anymore." And he said, "Well, I'm not, because I decided that I really wanted to take this up a notch." And one of the things that we had spoken about in our conversation was, who would be an appropriate, sponsor or something like that. And he said, "Well, I have to be really mindful." And as it turns out, he has one now, a really wonderful mattress company, right? Called lisa.com. And it's not a hair gel or styling or anything like that, which I thought was kind of interesting. But their values matched up really, really well. I mean, it was so aligned that now he has a wonderful opportunity to just do more. And there's no obligation. There's no, that he doesn't have to work in certain areas or something like that. It's just their values aligned. They found each other, and now he's on a tear. This guy is just absolutely magnificent. So, I mean, that's somebody who is just near and dear to my heart, that it just shakes me up how much giving he's doing and how much of an impact he's having on not just those that he serves, but those who are around him, and pick up that example,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I as you were talking, I searched that "do something for nothing," and I found one of the videos about what he's doing, and that's given me a really good sort of feel about the kind of people that you're interviewing. Just this whole idea of, some people like doing good and doing something that's really specific and unique to them, like the cleaning up some of these homeless guys, and then kind of inspiring everyone else around them to kind of do more and continue doing all this kind of good, as opposed to just kind of doing one thing and that's the end of it. And also, as opposed to kind of doing one thing and saying, "Look at me," and getting this recognition. It's like it's more about like going around and doing these things and getting other people to kind of buy into this. So like pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, and the thing is that he found what was really interesting, Robert, is what he found and he shared with people. And I think this is what resonated, is that in giving his talent, right, he thought that would be a big thing, or a good thing, not big like, "Oh, look at me," just like a good thing to do. And it is, and it really is. The thing about it is that what's interesting is that it was like the time that he spent with these folks. Like there's a lot of people who are out there who have needs, and they have been ignored for a long time. They're like the invisible ones, and that time that he spent, and that time that other people, not only on that day, but are spending with people and giving them their attention, their focus, and just recognizing them, as people, as fellow human beings in their communities, was a big transformative aspect to the folks that he serves. So yeah, it's really wonderful. It really is,
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you find these kind of people, or like, or do they come to you, or what's that sort of process like?
Oh gosh, it's both. It's both. So I might see something on TV or read something in the news and just reach out. Somebody might contact me. Most often, when it's somebody contacting me, though, it's somebody who wants to recognize somebody else, which is very, very cool. One of the first people who was referred to me was Krista Goronsky. She's incredible. She's actually a neighbor, as it turns out. So Krista is the co-founder and the executive director of an organization called the Fabulous Women of Petaluma, which is a town in Marin County, just outside of San Francisco. And somebody had recommended her and said, "Oh, I heard your show. I like your show. I like your focus. And here's somebody who I think who I know does a lot, and I think she would be great on the show." And I'll tell you what, she was absolutely right. I mean, we ended up having the first two-part show because we had our conversation, and it was, she's just doing so much, and there's so many different organizations and individuals. Well, I mean, it ended up being a two-part show because we were talking about so many things on such a incredibly deep and meaningful level and there were so many different examples and, inspiring pieces of like, hey, this is what somebody could do, or this is what somebody did, and this is the impact. I mean, it's just been really wonderful. And I'll have to tell you, Robert, selfishly, this was not an intention, but selfishly, one of the things that I am getting out of this is somebody like Josh, who is, across the pond, but I get to talk to him and we've become friends, and Krista, the same thing. We're actually friends now. We meet and we work together on some things. We had a presentation at a high school together, and we're planning to do more of those. That was an incredible experience. Being with somebody like Ron Klobundy from Generosity Feeds. He actually came here, sat down, broke bread with some friends and my family, and then I subsequently went over there for some training and stayed in with him and his family. It's just lovely, lovely people. So, it's been incredible, just absolutely incredible. It's changed my life in many, many ways.
Awesome. So lots and lots of people from different walks of life, and it sounds like lots of like amazing personalities and stuff. And you mentioned sort of near the top of the show that in interviewing these sorts of people, you've discovered all these kind of commonalities, common threads. So can you maybe talk about that and tell us what kind of like patterns and what kind of big insights you had from talking to these people?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I want to just kind of preface this, Robert, if you don't mind, by saying that their success, right, is measured differently than what we normally look at, right? Their success, I mean, it sounds kind of cliched, but if you measured their success in terms of the lives that they both save, like literally save, or impact and change direction in a positive way. I mean, these are some of the most incredibly successful people that you've ever met. And the work it takes for that type of success is actually exactly the same as it takes for somebody who's focused on either more material or something that's more quantifiable success. Okay. They're like literally exactly the same. They're just in a little different focus. So, for example, they tend to focus on things that they love to do and that they're good at, right? These are activities that are in their wheelhouse, those activities that overlap between what you love to do and what you're good at. I mean, these people generally wake up bouncing out the door, right? They're ready to go because they know that these things that they would do all the time, they're going to be doing like today, right? They just happen to apply it in a little different world, and it's sustaining, right? That's the point. Is that it's like what I heard Steve Jobs Steve Jobs was on a panel with Bill Gates, and somebody asked like what's important for success or how to be successful, right? This guy in the audience. And Steve just stood up and he said, well, I really want to tell you that passion is really important. Passion is super important, and I'll tell you why. And it was very rational. He said, things are going to get tough. They are really, really going to get tough. It's guaranteed. Any business venture, any social venture, any project, it's going to get tough. So the thing that'll sustain you, the thing that'll put the patience and the reserves in you when times get hard is passion. Because otherwise, what sane person would continue doing something that they didn't have a passion for, that they didn't love to do, or there's something that's super fascinating that they get something more out of it? So that's one thing for sure, Robert. The other thing is that one of the other things is that they start with the end in mind, right? And by that, I'm not talking about, they want to build, the best widget, or they want to have a multinational company. That's not their point. Their point is it all starts out with one. It starts out with one person or one group or, whatever it is. It's that impact right then and what they can do. That's what they always keep their eyes on. So no matter how large these organizations get, so like Donors Choose, that's a large organization. ALS, the Alzheimer's Foundation, right? The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Those are large organizations that we've had guests from those organizations. But it all starts with that one person or that one group that they want to have an impact on, and they focus on that, and they focus on that experience that they're going to have. They're focusing on making a difference right there, so they never lose sight of it, right? It's basically like if you were in graphic design, being focused on the user interface, right? And just that experience and what it's going to be like. So that's another thing that's really super important. I can go on and on. There are just some different key components in the way that they approach things, which is why they've been so incredibly successful, right?
Right, and this is pretty cool to hear, especially that that it's so similar to interviewing people who are making money. And I can totally, like, my brain's kind of, the gears are turning about all those different kinds of things, like having to have things catch on and get a following and get people to kind of join a movement, and navigating whatever sort of legal issues or setting up whatever kind of event needs to happen. I can totally imagine how a lot of the concrete actions are similar to like business stuff, and that whole motivation aspect, that whole have a passion to get you through those early times when things aren't quite picking up, and starting with the end in mind. So pretty cool stuff. And so as you're interviewing all these kinds of people, I imagine that some people kind of have these movements that really catch on, like you mentioned that ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, and I imagine some have more difficulty. So are there things that some people who have charities and movements and stuff like that, are there some things that some of them do correctly that others don't?
Well, I would just say that, like a business, right? Like a business or any commercial venture, there's different ways to approach it. So maybe the third really big piece of that, right? Because you think about internally, what are you doing? You think about who you're surrounding yourself with and what your point is. Thinking about your resources. Okay, one of the things that I've found is that the organizations that are doing it right will look at different resources, their people, and always be tapping them, right? They're always tapping them in the right way. They're always saying, what are you thinking? And they approach them with genuine curiosity and real respect for what they have. Because remember, Robert, one of the challenges, it's both a huge boom, and it's also something to be mindful for, that like a church or any other volunteer organization, right? Because a lot of these have their stakeholders include volunteers, and it's very, very specifically because volunteers, for the most part, or sometimes all, make up these organizations, right? So part of it is tapping them, and part of it is like offering up or opportunities. Like I had heard about this a healthcare nonprofit. There was a surgeon who was the chief of staff at a local very large hospital. So she had retired, and then she said, I want to get involved. And she walked over there and said, hey, this is my background. This is what I'd love to do. They said, okay, great. Come on back tomorrow. We'll have something for you. She was all excited. She came back, and they gave her like these, I don't know, vases or something, and asked her to fill the water and put the flowers in. Now, I mean, I got to tell you, that's important because for what they were doing, it was important to do those things. But that's like a complete mismatch of what this woman can do and what she can contribute versus what they were having her do. And it was so disappointing. She kind of faded away and didn't do it, and it was really a loss of opportunity. So the biggest piece, I think, in terms of operating well and really continuously growing and serving, right? Because in this piece, the market is a need. It is a true need, right? A human need. So in order to serve that, right, the best organizations are taking all of these people who have already stepped up to the plate and said, yeah, I want to help. I love it. I want to help. And they constantly give them opportunities for input and opportunities to grow and to serve, which is why they came on. And that's a super piece. I mean, just matching up opportunities and resources and people and seeing where they fit and being open to that, it keeps it dynamic. People stay super engaged and, frankly, they grow and they serve more. And that's been a big difference. And, that's been a big difference for them.
Awesome, and that definitely relates back to like Steve Jobs type of stuff and Henry Ford type of stuff, as far as like don't be be the dumbest person in the room, right, and have everyone kind of do their thing, and and that whole thing about having that genuine curiosity and real respect for people's opinion. I mean that's huge, and I think that's the kind of thing that like as we're teenagers and young adults, we kind of feel like we know everything, and we kind of forget to have that curiosity that maybe we had as a kid, and then later on in kind of an adult life we have to rediscover that, and some people don't, and those people who kind of don't have their curiosity or don't actually ask questions and stuff like that kind of fall by the wayside and kind of maybe just get kind of stuck in a cycle there where when there are problems that come across or opportunities for them to grow or whatever you want to call it, like they say they've heard everything, they think they know everything, they don't actually listen to stuff, and then that leads to really bad things. So that's huge, and that's anytime I've come across like whenever I was like looking for like a mentor or a mastermind or whoever, those people that actually like asked even like the dumb questions or listened about things that maybe they had already heard but just want to see things change. I mean that just whole part right there about having actual curiosity and asking questions and having the right people to kind of do their thing, especially if they're smarter than you. I mean, I think that's super huge there. And so, I don't want to keep you for too long, even though we're having a pretty good flow here. But getting a little bit back to that Giving Back podcast. So you've done 100+ episodes, had a lot of really cool people, a lot of amazing guests. Kind of, what's next for you? Is there anything kind of new and exciting coming up on the horizon?
So a couple things. I'm writing a book. I have a great editor who's really encouraged me to fully own this. What originally started as a series of interviews with transcribing a series of interviews and saying, here's a few comments from me, has grown into, with his encouragement and other people's encouragement, of like, well, so what are you learning from this? And why don't you share that? Because that's the point, right? Is that it's aspiration, it's inspiration, it's perspiration, and so what are you learning, and how are you using this for yourself? How are you using this to help others, right? So that's been really cool. I have no idea when the book will come out, but it should be at least it should be interesting to hear what other people are doing, right? I mean, and that's really key because it's not about me. I'll just I really feel like I'm the messenger, which is very cool, and being witness to that. The other thing is that I'm working with I'm working with people in organizations. Um, sometimes with the CSR component, that's the corporate social responsibility or the corporate philanthropy, and helping them engage their employees and engage their communities more effectively, right? Really getting them to be ambassadors, community ambassadors for the company, because it's something where, there's really a reflection of shared values. Um, and that's pretty cool. But I think one of the things that's been really awesome is people have been reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm working on. Can you help me with this project or this charity that I'm setting up, or getting more engaged with this group of people or people that share this problem, and how can I do it?" That's been a journey itself, and I have learned so much. I've just learned so much more. It's been incredible. I mean, it's just being engaged like that and seeing growth. And essentially, what I tell people is, I'm not really. I don't really consider myself smart enough or wise enough to be a coach or a mentor. But what I do bring from my background, as well as with the lessons that I'm learning and the experiences that I'm sharing from our guests, is that I am a very good accelerator. So once people choose to go on this path, once they've stood up and declared and said, "Hey, I'm all in, I'm going," right? They become intrinsically interesting to me. And being able to step back, I mean, literally to step back from their circumstances and interview them, right? Have a conversation and find out what is important to them, what they have going on, and literally doing a complete, 360 all around, like a 3D 360, and looking at the forest for the trees and connecting people, events, resources for them, and helping them shape that direction in a much more direct way. I mean, the speed with which they're moving is absolutely amazing. And I love being a part of that.
Awesome. I mean, it sounds like since this show has really picked up speed, you kind of have like a critical mass sort of. So where now it's easy to get guests, it's easy to kind of be that connector. So I mean, sounds like lots of awesome stuff on the horizon, and I'm looking forward to whenever the book comes out, whenever it's like the right time and it becomes what it's supposed to become. So lots of exciting stuff. And so, can you let us all know where to find that Giving Back podcast, as well as any other URLs you feel like sharing today?
Absolutely. I will share this www.givingbackpodcast.com, right? Just like it says. It's givingbackpodcast.com. And Robert, I'd like to offer something to your audience and I hope you'll find it useful.
Yeah, let's do it.
One of the things with a business oriented podcast I did recently, with it's called Entrepreneur on Fire, with a gentleman named John Lee Dumas. And we had I had offered something. He had asked what we can do, what we can do, what we can give, right? What we can give back. And I had offered people who had an idea of what they wanted to do, either incorporating giving back in their business, or they might have something that they want to create, to develop, right? And I offered a consulting with me, and there's no obligation. I'm not, it's not a bait and switch. It's not a what do they call it? It's not a tripwire or anything like that. It's honestly, if somebody has this in mind and would like to get involved, with their community, either for themselves or with their business or with both, or if they have a social entrepreneurial type of venture they'd like to talk about and help shape, I'm very happy to work with them. And you can just simply send me an email to givingbackpodcast@gmail.com. That's givingbackpodcast@gmail.com. And just say something in the subject line like, Robert Plank podcast, this is what I want to do. And just tell me a little bit about yourself, and we'll connect and we'll have a great conversation. Okay?
Okay, awesome. So everyone should, if you have that idea, or like if you want to create something like Rob said, or if you want to take this business you've built and add that giving back component, then email givingbackpodcast@gmail.com, and then in the subject line say Robert Plank sent you, and then that website is givingbackpodcast.com. So awesome stuff. If you guys listened carefully or listened a couple of times to listen and hear about sort of how Rob creates a movement and how what got Rob to make this and how Rob kind of keeps things going, and some of those insights about how this charity stuff is pretty similar to the business building stuff as far as like the passion and having to have that daily discipline and be organized. So lots of cool stuff, lots of cool takeaways from today's show. So everyone should go right now to givingbackpodcast.com. And I want to thank you so much, Mr. Rob Lowe, for stopping by the show and sharing what you had to share with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Robert. This has been great.
Awesome. Same here. Subscribe to us right now while it's still fresh on your mind at robertplank.com/iTunes, or just search Robert Plank in your iTunes app.